This segment of the Alice Stewart Show is brought to you by Aero Plumbing. For all your household or business plumbing needs, call Aero Plumbing at 1-866-PLUMBER or schedule an appointment online at aeroplumbing.net.
Welcome back to the Alice Stewart Show, 7:35. Keeping an eye on the situation there in Ferguson, Missouri. And this is a week out from the shooting of Michael Brown. And this has prompted a lot of civil unrest in that small town. The National Guard has been called out. And overnight, there was more unrest. 31 people were arrested despite the calls for peace. We have Attorney General Eric Holder will be going to Ferguson, Missouri tomorrow. And it's a lot of folks are weighing in on this. And here to talk more about this, I am joined with friend of the show, Dallas and Memphis talk radio show host Ben Ferguson. Ben, good morning.
Morning. How are you?
I'm doing great. Just can't keep. It's hard to avoid this on the news. It's all over the news because of just the sheer unrest in that region. And your thoughts on this? There've been a national. The governor has called for help. The National Guard is out there protecting the streets. What are your thoughts on the unrest there in Ferguson?
I think this has now turned into not an issue of protesting so much about Michael Brown's death. It's about, I think, vengeance, wanting to settle the score by many of those. If you listen to what they're chanting, this idea that we're threatening violence if we don't get what we want, which is what no justice, no peace is. You hear the chants of, shoot the police. I mean, as they put it last night, there were still people chanting that. There's people that say that the video of the stiff-arm robbery at the convenience store was done in a way to just slander Michael Brown. Well, here's what we know. We know Michael Brown robbed a store. We know Michael Brown is a very big dude. His nickname was Big Mike. He's 300-plus pounds, 6'4", and we saw him use his body to assault that store clerk owner. But, we're talking 9 minutes before the police, had that confrontation. The other thing is, a lot of people say, well, that police officer didn't know that he just robbed a store. Maybe he didn't. But Michael Brown knew he robbed that store. Michael Brown knew that he assaulted a clerk at that store. And so his mindset when the police rolled up was certainly a mindset of, I'm about to get busted, I'm about to go to jail instead of maybe going to college, as so many people try to quote. He was just an innocent, nice guy getting ready for his first semester of college. Well, he knew he made a mistake, I'm sure, at that point, and realized he might be in trouble for it. And then, we had people in his own family saying that Michael Brown was shot in the back. Well, we now know from the autopsy, he was not shot in the back. You have Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton run around saying this was an assassination, that the police officer is a murderer. Well, he didn't shoot him in the back. So 3 of the top witnesses, and also one of those was his best friend that was with him that day, all claimed he was shot in the back. And the autopsy shows he wasn't. So, are they trustworthy? I mean, it certainly is fair to say that their stories should now be discounted, by a lot. I mean, if someone gets shot in the back or not, and he wasn't shot in the back, but that's the story they want to tell. And I think now when these questions come out, you now see a crowd that says, well, we don't care about the facts. We don't care about what may have happened. We don't care that he was shot in the chest and maybe he was, in fact, rushing towards the police officer when the police officer was forced to use that deadly force. They want a cop in jail because he's white, and there's nothing else that you can say that's going to make a difference to them in Ferguson. And it's really sad that in 2014 we're still in this place.
Well, and they want, a lot of calls I've seen yesterday were not just in jail. They want to see the officer dead, and I saw chants of that yesterday. And you mentioned the state of mind of Michael Brown that night, and there's indications that he strong-armed a store, stealing things. The family has identified him on the video, and being approached by an officer, Michael Brown thinking they were coming after him for that reason. Now we also know, in addition to that mindset, from the autopsy results, that there was marijuana in his system, which also could have played a factor in his behavior. But all of this, we now know, after what originally was all these folks going to Ferguson because an innocent, unarmed kid getting ready to go off to college who's never heard a fly was murdered by police officers. The story is completely different today than it was a week ago.
Well, and not only that, I think that it goes back to the core. If you really want justice, you would start looking at these facts. But Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton, they don't want justice. They want revenge. They want to equal a score for what I think they believe is reparations for what has happened in the past in this country to African Americans. And you don't do that by attacking a white police officer who very well may have just been doing his job, who may not be, as you refer to him, a murderer. I mean, I remind people, when Trayvon Martin and that case was starting to not go the way of Jesse Jackson and his organization, the Rainbow Push Coalition, they knew that there was going to be some issues that came out about Trayvon Martin. If you remember, he was not the perfect little 14-year-old kid we saw in that T-shirt picture that was 4 years old, you know, when all that happened. We know that he did drugs. We know that there was a lot of, you know, pictures of him, you know, looking like a gangster and different things. And so they realized they were starting to lose on that issue, that maybe this kid was not, you know, just an innocent child, you know, as they tried to imply, they got shot, you know, and killed in cold-blooded murder. There was a struggle. There was a fight. He was on top of George Zimmerman. George Zimmerman was getting beat. So what did they do? They went out on national TV and in local TV markets with their head of the Rainbow Push Coalition, and they said, well, we know that Trayvon Martin was shot in the back of the head assassination style. Now, they knew that wasn't true. They had just left Florida, met with the family. They knew that Trayvon Martin was not shot in the back of the head, but Jesse Jackson, who claimed he's a man of God, a reverend, they went out and perpetrated a lie to start a race war in local communities, and even said it in churches from the pulpit that Trayvon Martin was shot in the back of the head. They knew that didn't happen. The autopsy showed that didn't happen. The autopsy showed that he was shot in the chest, not even close to the head. Yet they put that lie out there because they needed that narrative to be that this was a race war, a racist cop, a racist George Zimmerman. You know, they don't care about the facts, and they will even lie and be busted lying, trying to start a riot, trying to start a race war, and they did it with George Zimmerman, and I think they're trying to do the exact same thing now. They don't want this to be peaceful. They don't want it to be quiet. They want it to be big, and they want it to continue to escalate, and I'm not sure why.
And I don't see it getting better anytime soon. One last question, I guess, Ben Ferguson of the Ben Ferguson Show, Dallas and Memphis radio talk show host. Ben, your thoughts. Eric Holder will be on the ground tomorrow you would like to think for the investigation, but how much do you think the racial tension and the race element of this is distracting from what the real goal is an investigation to find answers as to exactly what happened?
Well, it's huge because you're going to be wanting to, you're going to, look, if you're an investigator, you're going to know how big of a deal this is. And you know the narrative that many that are elected, including, our Attorney General, including the President's now, talked about this multiple times. In front of the camera, you know that there are people that are going to want to make sure that there's pressure put on you to tell the story that they want told, which is this was not an 18-year-old kid. This was a 13-year-old kid who was innocent, who didn't get in a fight with the cops, who didn't rob a store, who didn't assault a worker at that store. So when you have, I wonder how much, unfair pressure is coming from Eric Holder going to Ferguson. There is another side of this that I noticed yesterday with President Obama, and I know we got to wrap it up, but I think this is a very important point to make. Once they named, the governor named the state trooper, the African-American trooper in charge of dealing with the riots, and in fact it has done nothing at all. More people have been injured, more people have been shot since he's been in charge than the night when the quote-unquote military tactics were used on the first night of those riots and protests. No one was shot that night.
Right.
Well, there's been multiple people shot now. So I do think now when you say, okay, the African-American community is going to take this over and they're not able to stop the African-American community, you now have got the president in a pretty tough situation, Eric Holder, and they better get a hold of this thing soon.
All right. It's tense situation. We appreciate your time, Ben Ferguson. Go to benfergusonshow.com for more and tune into his show, Dallas and Memphis radio talk show host. Ben, thank you.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.
All right, take care. We'll take a break. When we come back, Gary Marks, Coalition for America's Future, on efforts underway for the midterm elections and 2016. This segment of the Alice Stewart Show brought to you by Aero Plumbing. For all of your household or business plumbing needs, call Aero Plumbing, 1-866-PLUMBER, or schedule an appointment online at aeroplumbing.net.